Hey guys, today I'll show you a horror thriller film named Never Let Go. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. There's a forest where a screaming little girl turns into a pile of bones, and wandering zombies slither with forked tongues. In the heart of the forest, it's not a mysterious witch who resides, but an ordinary single mother and her 2 sons. The youngest boy, Nolan, and his older brother, Samuel, have lived in this forest all their lives. Their mother has always told them that the outside world is full of evil, and only the wooden house they live in can protect them. Whenever they leave the house, they must tie a rope around their waists, otherwise demons will grab them and possess them. This morning, as usual, their mother calls them to wake up. Their food is running low, and Samuel is eyeing the croaking frogs, while Nolan shares his breakfast with their pet dog. After they finish eating, they all, including the pet dog, touch the wooden doorframe for good luck, then tie their ropes and head out in search of food. They each go in different directions after exchanging some last words of caution, but it doesn't take long before they encounter an old, familiar face. It's their grandfather, now possessed by evil, wandering the forest. The demon softly whispers to their mother, urging her to let them go. The mother, seemingly used to the white noise of the demon's words, remains unfazed as she continues gathering branches. Samuel, eager to find food, first discovers a snake's shed skin and then, with his slingshot, brings down a squirrel. He excitedly shows it to Nolan. For children raised in the forest, survival is second nature. They collect strange blue strips from tree bark and even nibble on little toads as snacks. Nolan notices a bird's nest in a tree. Sadly, when he climbs up, he finds all the eggs shattered, except for one that lies just within reach on the ground. This egg is a huge temptation for Nolan, who is always hungry, but the rope is too short for him to get close enough. Nolan considers loosening the rope to grab the egg, but just then, Samuel comes over, not only disapproving of his idea, but blowing his whistle to call their mother to intervene. Nolan knows he's in the wrong, but he can't stand his brother's mama's boy attitude. Samuel adds fuel to the fire, telling Nolan that Mom loves him more. Furious, Nolan steps on his brother's rope, setting off a chain of events. Samuel tumbles down a slope, his foot getting caught between branches with a loud snap. More importantly, his rope comes loose. Nolan, realizing he's made a huge mistake, quickly blows the whistle to call for their mother's help. Samuel struggles but can't climb back up, and the eerie forest around them hisses as if something is drawing closer. Nolan, not thinking twice, loosens his rope to help his brother. The 2 brothers struggle to climb back up, but their mother arrives too late, getting stuck herself because the rope isn't long enough. Just then, a white-haired woman in fat suddenly appears from the trees, snarling, ready to devour the brothers. In a split second, their mother cuts the rope and yanks Samuel to safety. She quickly ties them all together with a single rope, but the zombie, still relentless, sniffs and slithers around them, its black, juicy tongue darting out hungrily. Shaking, their mother tells them to breathe. The camera shifts, and the zombies vanish as if they were never there. Nolan and Samuel have never seen the demon. Is it all in their mother's mind, or is it real? Once home, their mother throws them onto the wooden planks above the cellar, which are carved with symbols to ward off evil. Holding a knife, she forces Samuel and Nolan to recite the oath they've memorized since childhood. When they finish, she finally lowers the knife. Nolan tries to explain further, but their mother is still too angry. Samuel, of course, has broken a bone, but his curiosity is undeterred. He asks their mother what the demon looked like this time. She replies it's like her mother. Demons are always cunning, using different forms to tempt them and bring them down. At dinner, the events of the day are far from over. Their mother, once grateful that the demon hadn't shown itself to Samuel and Nolan, now realizes the reason behind it, because the demon was using that very fact to drive a wedge between them. To convince the brothers, she tells them about her past, when the demon appeared in the form of a little girl, crying for help. The girl's foot was trapped in a tree hole, right where the rope ended. To confirm whether the demon had given up, their mother checked on the little girl every day, watching as her skin turned a dark, mottled color, eventually becoming a skeleton. The girl never disappeared. This was the demon's intention. The demon made their mother doubt herself, tempting her to leave the safety of the rope. She warned Samuel and Nolan, saying that the demon has many layers, like the snakes they saw in the forest. The greatest trick it plays is influencing them. As time passes, they'll forget its presence and they'll lower their guard. Then it will grab them. This warning had a powerful effect, and the two boys obediently listened to their mother's words. After meals, their family had a ritual. Each person would take turns lying in the cellar to meditate for an hour. During his hour, Nolan felt that everything disappeared. His mother, brother, the dog, the house, all that remained was darkness. In the endless dark, he remembered his birth in this house and how it kept them safe every day. Gradually, the darkness seemed to fade. Their mother was pleased with Nolan's response. She told him to look around and assured him that all his dreams would come true. The demon couldn't touch him here. Though she had spent hours brainwashing him, Nolan, full of defiance, still doubted the demon's existence. During the day, it was the first time he and Samuel had ever let go of their ropes, and nothing changed. Samuel countered, saying it was because the demon didn't catch them. But Nolan asked if their mom would kill them if it had caught them. It turned out that the house hadn't always been home to just 3 people. The boys' father, grandfather, and grandmother had all been possessed by demons, and their mother had killed them all herself. However, Samuel still insisted that their mother was protecting them. Nolan closed his book, but he didn't give up on the fantasy of running free like the pet dog. Because the demon didn't care about animals, the pet dog didn't need to be tied up. Nolan tried to convince Samuel not to fully trust their mother. Even though Samuel claimed he really felt something closing in during the day, Nolan scoffed, thinking it was just fear. Samuel's mama's boy nature wasn't easily shaken. Seeing this, Nolan changed the subject. He heard Samuel say their mother loved him more, which Samuel flatly denied. He insisted he never said that. Nolan then explained that he didn't mean to step on Samuel's rope, and Samuel simply replied that he knew. As for whether they believed each other, the 2 brothers, each with their own thoughts, fell into a silent sleep. The camera pulled back from the brothers' bedroom to the house's front porch. In the deep night, the sounds of insects and knife sharpening filled the air. Their mother sat on a rocking chair, sharpening her knife. A man slowly approached the house and greeted her. The man was none other than Samuel and Nolan's dead father. He softly expressed his longing for his wife and children, asking their mother to give the 2 boys to him so they wouldn't have to go hungry anymore. Their mother ignored his threat and smelly bullshit. The man regretfully touched the handle of the front door's steps and said he would make her eat her children one day. Without hesitation, the mother slammed the door shut. The father, appearing like a ghost, seemed to confirm that these demons were not just her hallucinations, and the identities of the couple were even more uncertain. The winter's effects still lingered, and the family continued to worry about food. While working alongside their mother, Nolan became curious about the snake tattoo on her back, which she had gotten in the city. His mother interrupted his questions, saying the tattoo was done before everything began. The city was now overrun by evil, and she revealed she had once been a completely different person. Nolan used to fear the tattoo, but now his longing for the outside world had grown. He even found himself starting to like the tattoo, a symbol of the old world. Their mother spoke casually about her past. When she was Nolan's age, she didn't believe her mother's words either, so she left this house in the forest. At the time, she never imagined she would return, but now this house was the only place that could ensure Nolan and Samuel's safety. Nolan asked his mother what would happen if the demon did manage to get to one of them and enter the house. She seriously told him that the demon would make them kill each other. That's the end of the world. Nolan's curiosity wasn't satisfied, though. He didn't want to live alone. He hoped there were other survivors outside the forest, other houses like theirs that protected people. But his mother believed they weren't alone. They had each other, and that was everything. They were their entire world. Nolan, who has never stepped out of the forest, couldn't verify whether their mother's theory about the cabin was true. However, one thing was certain: their food was gradually running out. The kitchen was filled with empty cans, and each day they received less food. The last thing they ate was a garlic bulb. Nolan and Samuel shared it, half each, while their mother pondered how she could feed her children. Samuel and Nolan, however, were not as concerned. On the first night of the new moon, they played country music on the record player, gently swaying together. Samuel and Nolan laughed, but their mother kept a furrowed brow. Later that evening, while taking a bath, the mother was startled to see Nolan suddenly appear by the bathtub. He had forgotten to wear his bell again, leading to this involuntary sleepwalking episode. It felt like a bad omen. The next day, their mother heard a crow cawing while hunting. When she looked closely, she saw the crow pecking at Nolan's face. She jumped in shock, but when she turned back, Nolan was gone. The crow remained perched on the branch. In an attempt to catch the crow, she aimed her crossbow, but just as she did, Nolan, his face half-eaten, appeared by her side. She flinched, and the crow, startled, flew away. That day, the children could only eat tree bark again. Tonight, it was salted and covered in sauce, but the bark still tasted dry and hard to swallow. One day, while Nolan was busy peeling bark, he suddenly realized his mother and brother had vanished. The rope around his waist tightened as if an invisible hand was desperately trying to pull him into a dry well. At the last moment, Nolan jerked awake, another episode of sleepwalking. Despite wearing a bell on his ankle, he had unknowingly left the house without his rope. Panicked, he was relieved when his mother appeared just in time to lead him back. This time, Nolan's sleepwalking infuriated their mother. She sternly made him repeat the family vow again and locked him in the cellar. Trembling, Nolan eventually lost control, and only then did his mother relent. His desire to leave the house grew stronger. Samuel didn't agree with his plan. He believed their mother always had a solution, but Nolan no longer saw her as an all-knowing figure. Despite trying to convince Samuel that leaving was the only way to find food, Nolan couldn't get him to go along. Outside, the mother overheard their conversation clearly. She knew she had to act or the children would eventually leave. Hunting for food in the forest was becoming increasingly difficult. She turned her focus to the family's old hunting dog. Although the pet dog had grown up with the children, he hadn't caught anything in months. Knowing it was too cruel to express her intentions directly, their mother opened an old box of belongings and pulled out a camera. She explained to her children, who had never left the forest, that the camera was a special tool. It could capture a moment, even convey feelings like love. After this build-up, she slowly revealed her purpose. For them to survive, they only had one choice: the pet dog. Nolan immediately protested. He saw the pet dog as family and a friend. Everything the pet dog did was to protect them. The thought of eating him was even more terrifying than the demons outside. Nolan and their mother argued fiercely. He refused to kill the pet dog and even believed the demon was just a figment of his mother's imagination. The decision was left to Samuel. Samuel looked at both of them. He didn't want to kill the pet dog, but their mother was right. They had no choice. Nolan yelled that he hated them, hated the house. But this didn't stop their mother from taking the pet dog from his arms. It was a painful decision for her as well. She cried, stroking the pet dog's face, unable to make the final cut. This gave Nolan an opening. He would never allow his mother to kill the pet dog. Nolan, holding a machete, walked to the gate of the garden, intending to cut the rope that kept his mother tied. In the meantime, the pet dog seized the opportunity to escape the garden. Nolan believed that this would show his mother there was nothing to be afraid of. His mother desperately tried to stop him. Nolan's doubts were exactly what the demon wanted to achieve. Even as his mother screamed for him not to do it, Nolan decisively cut the rope and locked the garden gate, trapping his mother outside. She pounded on the door, begging him to open it, losing her usual calm. She confessed that she had lied, that she had brought the demon here, and that if the demon touched her, it would force her to kill Nolan. Nolan didn't believe her bullshitting words. Just then, Samuel appeared, rushing to Nolan, trying to help the mother escape the garden. But it was too late. The woman in fat with a forked tongue was already approaching their mother. With a shard of glass in her hand, the mother slashed her own throat, desperate to protect the children from the demon. Outside, Samuel knocked Nolan down, but by then their mother had already stopped breathing. Nolan stepped back in shock. He never expected it to end like this. His mother's resolute actions terrified him. Silently, he tied her rope around his waist and stepped back, distancing himself from the scene. That night, the house was filled with the soothing sounds of TikTok music again, but this time, no one danced in TikTok style or laughed along. The record player worked in solitude. The brothers, having lost their mother, couldn't sleep. They still faced the threat of survival. Meanwhile, the pet dog seemed to sense something was wrong. He ran off into the forest, away from the house. Samuel and Nolan could only survive on pine needle tea, and Samuel, too weak to move, lay still. Nolan became the pillar of the family. He tied all 3 ropes together and ventured into the forest alone, hoping to find food. This time, he walked farther than before, reaching the edge of the forest, where he discovered an asphalt road. The rope wasn't long enough to go further. He realized that there might be people nearby, so he called out for help, but no one answered. Disappointed, Nolan turned back and headed home. Just as he reached the doorstep, someone called out to him, a man hiking by. He had heard Nolan's calls and came to check. This was the first person Nolan had seen outside the forest, and he cautiously sized him up, unsure whether this was a real person or just another demon trick. When the man learned that Samuel was ill and they needed food, he generously offered some from his backpack. Nolan's wariness slowly started to dissolve. He wanted to believe that there were humans in the outside world, that they weren't alone. But Samuel, armed with a crossbow, appeared on the porch, threatening the man not to move. Samuel was convinced that the man was a demon in disguise. Even though the man repeatedly assured them he wouldn't harm them, Samuel shot him with an arrow. The man clutched his side and hurriedly fled. Since the man's backpack contained food, Nolan followed the trail of blood and found the dying man. The poor guy had dialed 911 but was too weak to explain his location or situation. Nolan grabbed the entire backpack of food and eagerly began eating. Samuel watched him eat the canned food and said he had fallen for the demon's trick. Samuel still didn't forgive Nolan for what he did to their mother, but by evening, hunger had made him more honest. Samuel ate cans and cookies, and then, from the backpack, he found a map, a flashlight, and a photo of the man with his daughter. After seeing all this, Samuel was almost convinced that the man was a real human. He sat in a rocking chair on the porch, idly playing with the flashlight. Suddenly, strange noises came from the small garden. That was where their mother had died. Samuel quickly tied the rope and ran to check. Through the glass, he saw a figure in the garden. Hoping it was his mother, Samuel rushed to open the door, but when he did, he found her lifeless body still lying there. Just then, a voice called from behind. A little girl greeted Samuel, asking if he had seen her father. Samuel recognized her from the photo. He denied meeting the man, but the girl had recognized Samuel's flashlight as belonging to her father. Samuel explained it was a misunderstanding, as he thought her father was a demon in disguise. The girl didn't understand, but she was clearly frightened, and in panic, she turned and ran. Concerned for her safety, Samuel immediately chased after her. By now, he fully believed the girl and her father were real humans. Samuel's rope soon got tangled in the trees. In order to keep up with the girl, he let the rope go. The deep forest was silent except for the hum of insects. Samuel saw a creature with 6 hands climbing the tree, and he breathed anxiously. At that moment, the demon, disguised as the little girl, was already behind him, shoving its forked tongue into Samuel's mouth. Samuel struggled, but he couldn't resist the demon's power. Nolan tossed and turned on the couch, only to suddenly realize that Samuel wasn't home. He rushed outside and spotted a flashlight and a rope lying nearby. Samuel was missing. Just as Nolan panicked, Samuel called back to him. Following the sound, Nolan walked forward, but then Samuel appeared behind him, cutting the rope off his waist. The headlights of an abandoned car flickered on as Samuel stood frozen, staring at Nolan. Realizing something was horribly wrong, Nolan scrambled back toward the house. Heart pounding, he pushed open his mother's bedroom door to find Samuel sitting on the bed, facing away from him. Above Samuel, the shadow of the demon began to spread across the ceiling. With a trembling voice, Nolan shook his motionless brother, his only family left. He grabbed Samuel's hand, touched the wood, and silently repeated their family's vow. Possessed by the demon, Samuel sensed the threat. He pulled out a machete hidden beneath the sheets and swung it violently at Nolan. Nolan tumbled out of the bedroom and into the hallway, narrowly escaping. Samuel, with superhuman strength, shoved the bed against the door and set the house on fire. The flames roared as the distorted sound of the record player filled the air. Lying flat on the floor, Nolan heard the chaos downstairs. Black smoke poured from the floorboards, choking him as he coughed uncontrollably. To save himself, Nolan grabbed a wet towel, covering his nose and mouth, and climbed out of the window onto the roof. Samuel, sitting cross-legged outside, had a machete by his side. When he saw Nolan nearly fall off the roof, he smiled, waiting patiently like a predator. Nolan knew escaping the house meant certain death, so he turned back and crawled through the window, desperately trying to survive. His mother's gentle voice called to him, halting his steps. Behind the curtain, he saw her figure, and with a soothing voice, she lured him back to her embrace. The fire burned through the curtains, and his mother, dressed in her nightgown, appeared before him. Nolan didn't waver. He scolded the demon for what it had done to Samuel, but the demon insisted it was helping Samuel see the truth about himself. The demon-possessed mother took slow steps toward Nolan, but he didn't lose his composure in the flames. As the house crumbled around him, Nolan remembered the one part of the cabin still intact. He opened the cellar door. The demon, unfazed, walked slowly toward the cellar, but before it could enter, Nolan lunged at it. Together, they fell into the cellar, just like when Nolan had meditated there. He held the demon tight, feeling the darkness fade away. The cabin's protective force took effect, and the demon shattered into onion pieces. Firefighters later found Nolan barely alive among the ruins of the house. They airlifted him out, heading toward the outside world. Contrary to what his mother had said, the cabin was not the only world. When Nolan opened his eyes, he began searching for his brother, and there Samuel lay beside him. They were free. But not far from the cabin, Samuel had taken a selfie with his camera. In the photo, beside Samuel's hand, there was also a demon's hand. It was still unclear whether the brothers were truly free, or if they simply had fallen into another trap set by the demon, like their mother before them. The film leaves many unanswered questions. The cabin in the forest was built by Nolan's grandparents, and even back then his grandmother was aware of the evil presence. This suggests the family may be cursed. Nolan's mother didn't believe in these things until she left the forest for the city. What changed her mind? Clearly it was her children, Nolan and Samuel, and their father had appeared as a ghost, revealing that both of their identities were anything but simple. This implies that the father was probably a demon in disguise, or a person possessed by the demon. After meeting the father and having children, their mother finally saw through the demon's plot and, to protect her children, was forced to return to the cabin. Before her death, their mother claimed that she was the one who brought the demons back, but in reality, that wasn't the case. Nolan's ankle often had a bell on it, and he had to wear it to prevent himself from sleepwalking. The one who may have actually brought the demons back wasn't their mother, but Nolan. He was a child who had inherited the demon's bloodline, and only the bell could suppress it. This is also why their mother kept the brothers isolated from the outside world. If a child with demon blood was allowed to live in the outside world, as their mother had warned, the old world would be completely destroyed. Samuel's behavior in the film also supports this theory. Throughout the story, Samuel always stood by their mother, which indicates that he had inherited his mother's will. Samuel repeatedly emphasized that their mother loved him more, further proving that, on a subconscious level, Nolan yearned for their mother's love but struggled to gain it. With this in mind, let's revisit the title of the film, Never Let Go. Who was really holding on? Was it the mother holding on to the children, or was it the demon holding on to the family? They clung to the rope, which was their lifeline, but in the end, it became the trigger for their self-destruction. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.